So today, I want to just see if we can just explain that for the last time how dimensioning works, because none of you are actually getting it. Although that's unfair, because maybe you got it, but you didn't give me drawings which showed me that you got it. So I'm going to close this brief unless anyone has any questions. No. Right, so I've created a just like what looks like a block of wood. So I want to see if we can go through a very simple process to illustrate that the drawings that you create are connected with reality in a very real way. And what I'm looking for is that you are able to understand what that connection is, because things like datums, center lines, what is the other one? Not the witness lines. Anyways, all the bits and pieces that go into creating a detailed drawing actually depend on you understanding the process that you're trying to describe. And so I've created this block of wood. Assume you are going into a workshop. I'm assuming that you guys still use the workshop.
Yeah, we still do.
You still do. Okay,
Yeah.
So really, when you're creating a detailed drawing, you're really speaking to someone who works in a workshop. Who's joined us? That's John. I'm going to mute you for a sec, John. Okay, so you really are speaking to someone in a workshop, and you've got to tailor the detailed drawing to the person in the workshop. Whether that person is operating a CNC machine with high-end software behind it, or someone with an old-fashioned milling machine, or whatever it is, they still understand how these things work, and they're looking for stuff that speaks to them. That's really what a detailed drawing is. So here's a block of wood. Assume I've given you a drawing with, or I've given someone a drawing with these basic dimensions. I've said, cut me this piece of whatever it is that I want to these specifications. So how would you go about doing this? So you would start off with one part of the wood. You'd obviously start off either with that end and that end as your beginning points. Okay, so the beginning points are the same as your datums. Now, the thing about datums is datums are single starting points. They are not, you can't have more than one datum per plane. So here's a datum for the XZ plane. Here's a datum for the YZ plane. And then the underside here would be the datum for the XY plane. So you only have three datums. You have three starting points. I mean, if you went into a workshop, you'd say, okay, I've got to start somewhere. Where do I start? I've got to measure this 80 millimeter dimension. So you would then draw a line 80 millimeters from this point here on the top surface. Pretty basic, all right? So you draw your line. Okay, so I'm going to chop this away. See if I can get this done pretty quickly. I'll chop this away as if we were in the workshop. So I'm going to say yes. Okay, so I've made a cut. I've cut that piece away, and I'm going to discard it. So here's another dimension. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start from this plane here, and I'm going to measure 800 millimeters. And I've got this line. I'm going to wire cut it. So let's go through. So I've actually made a cut. I've cut that piece off. So here I've got a block of wood, which is 80 millimeters by 800. And now I want to put fillets on it. So I've got, these are 8 millimeter fillets. I haven't actually dimensioned it, but I should be able to just fill it quickly. You'd maybe mark a line. This is probably what you do in the workshop. You'd probably find that point there. And chop off a slice like that, and then you would curve the rest, you would like sand the rest around. But in the workshop with the milling machine, what they would do is they'd add an 8 millimeter or a diameter 16 bullnose cutter, or you'd put a router on with a curve in it, and you'd route this end off. Whatever it is, so we're going to do all of them at once, and we'll go all the way through. Okay, so you would have chopped off your 4 fillets like this. All right, and then I've got these slots here which I want to aim through this. So I might have done these prior to the fillets or afterwards, depends on the process. But let's just have a look at this view. So the instruction here is from that edge there, which is a datum, go 24 millimeters, and then from 24 millimeters go 17, and then create that same piece at a frequency of 34. So I hope that makes sense. So we're going to measure 24, and then we're going to put in some sort of cut all the way through. So let's do them one. Let's just do, sorry, let's do one wire cut. Okay, and so that'll be cut out like this. That makes sense to you. Let's delete that. And then the rest would be, well, okay, from this point here, measure 34 and do the same thing. And then from the equivalent point, so let's just do that again. All right, so then that 34 gives you the instruction that keep repeating that shape at intervals of 34. So I would then, let's just draw a line in. I would then draw a line in from there, make it 34 millimeters. Sorry, that's the wrong point. Let's do that again. So it would be from this point, 34. Okay, so you can see that that line lines up with this. And then I would repeat the process. So we can just do all of these now. So that's as much as I suppose that's as much as I can show you now. I just wanted to see if there was some basic way to try and get you to understand how dimensioning works. So I don't know, is this working? Is this helping anyone?
Yeah, it is definitely.
It's definitely helpful. Just like, I feel like part of what I'm specifically struggling with is this is like very logical and makes sense.
Okay.
But when dealing with kind of like relatively complex shapes, like some of our recent projects, and laying them out on a page, I'm putting down too much information on the page, which then kind of undermines the actual point of a dimension drawing.
Okay, no, I suspect that, and as I've said before, I think the problem is that because SolidWorks and other programs allow you to put dimensions in at will, and because you're faced with a shape and you can put dimensions in, you put them in, and then it becomes more and more difficult to figure out whether you've started at the right point. If you can, this is what you've got to do. You've got to go at it systematically. So I wonder if maybe we should have a look at one of your projects and see if we can't dimension that step by step. Would that help?
If possible, that'd be amazing. That'd be brilliant. And then we kind of maybe like I know at least mine, and I could kind of compare it to how it should be and how I'm doing it, and I can easily tell exactly what I'm doing that wrong.
All right, choose volunteering. I suppose whoever wants their drawing.
Huh? Can I volunteer?
We can do more than one. Sipo, I know, is dying to have his done.
I feel like his has been done. I've seen his lounge.
Yeah, I know his has been done. Yeah, exactly. You're right. And I've done a. Okay, we'll do yours first then. So I'm going to hop into Sorry, I have to hop into this hyper manager. I just need your main plastic.
Yeah, it'll be the cable given answer about
Plastic.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with detailed drawings, not assemblies. So assemblies, you don't dimension. I mean, I have explained this, so I don't think I need to do it again. But yeah, you don't. Right. So here's the part. Okay. All right. So let's just see file, drawing from part. Select A0. Let's go with the front view. Drop that in first.
Is this recording?
It is record. Should be. Hold on, let me just check. Yeah, it's recording. So you've got your three primary views. So I think you chose this as a datum. Is that right, Gabriel?
Yeah, I chose
that line. Okay, so the first thing is what I would do here is, if something is symmetrical essentially about a center line, right, we're going to have to, we've only got 10 minutes left in the session, so we're going to have to go to a second session at 2 o'clock. Then obviously the center line becomes the most essential part of what you're doing, as far as the one kind of dimension. So even though things in this top view are offset, so these depressions here on the top and this grid pattern are not symmetrical, everything else about it is symmetrical. So it actually requires a center line. Vian, are you there? Just a quick note, a center line, you have to look at a center line and say, annotation, and say, if I put a center line in, does the center line halve the object? Okay, so I'm just addressing Vian because he used a center line which went through a curved object, which if you look at it doesn't halve the object, even though it's a center line. Remember last week we spoke about center line being three different things. Well, if it goes through the object through its center, that is also a center line, but you can only call it a center line with a CL on the end if it actually halves the object. If it does what we're doing here. So, and you must put center lines in at both ends of the lines, by the way. So not just one side. So, okay, I'll try not to deal with irrelevant detail, but these are all important things. So now with that center line in place, you're going to dimension everything relative to the center line because the center line makes sense as your one datum. So let's just put those datums in. So we've got one datum is here, which I'm going to put in this view here, this top view. Okay, and then the other datum will be this one. And the third datum, most obviously, I would think would be this space. And that's it. You don't have any more datums than that. You cannot have a fourth datum. There will be an exception somewhere in the world where you can have a fourth exception, but for what you do for me, there are only three datums, 1, 2, 3, and sometimes only 2. Does that make sense so far? What that means is that, okay, now look at this, just watch. I've put the datum in, but it's at the wrong point. Remember, these lines here are not lines. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to change that to be with font. And then I can see that all those dashed lines are lines that I mustn't use. So I'm going to have to delete this, put in another datum. Okay, so these dashed lines I can't use as to dimension 2, and I must make sure none of my dimension lines go there. I want to change that later to C. So I can start with this view, or I could start with the top view, but let's start with this one. So I've got A as a datum, which means I have to go from this point to whatever this feature does. So let's do that. I might need to blow this up, but for this exercise, I'm not going to. I'm going to go from here to here. Remember, we need positions. So I've got position 1, because now, remember, that's the datum. So just for clarity's sake, I'm going to draw this in as a dotted line, just to remind myself that this is the line that all my dimensions must come with. So I've got position 1, and position 2 of this flat part of this feature is assumed because that is also a datum. So just for this exercise, just to remind myself, that's the other datum. So I've got 2 positions. So that means I know that from there to there is 80, and it's at 0. So now I need to go from there to there. And that's 50. Okay, so I've got this feature basically covered, because all I need to do now is put in those 2 radii. Okay, so if you do this systematically, you should be able to go. Oh, looks like we finished. Have we? Oh, can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, I think we've got about like 3 or 4 minutes, so I might be cut off. If I'm cut off, I'll see you at 2 again. So do it systematically. That's one feature done. It's everything that you need to know in this view is done. Let's go to the next one. So this radius here starts from a certain point. I know it starts at the 0 point because here's my datum. So I need to go from there up to there. So I've got position 2 dimensioned, and I need to go from there up to that line. And here, what I'm noticing as well, you need to select your lines very, very carefully. So there's a bit of a whoopsie here in your modeling, Gabriel. A little bit of a whoopsie.
It's designed so that the pipe fits into that radius. There's a steel pipe next to it.
Okay, well then you might have to actually blow this up to explain this little detail. So you might have to put a detail in here just to show that which line you're referencing. So let's just try it again. You can go in reverse, but as long as let's go from there to there. Okay, and see what's happening here is I'm building my dimensions up from smallest to largest. And I'm going feature by feature. So I can go to this next feature here. Down to there. Okay, so I've got those things covered. And I need to know now from there to, so here's a bit of a problem. I'm going to have to find some way of creating, see if we can do this. Sketch. So I really am going to have to blow this up to show what I'm referencing when I put in this next dimension. So I'm going to have to go from there to there. And I'm going to have to go once again from that point. Remember, positions are there's always 2 dimensions to a position, even if sometimes they're implied. So now I've got two positions dimensioned. All good so far?
Perfect, thank you. This is really, really helpful.
Okay, right. So I'm not going to go through everything now because you're going to have to figure the rest out. You're going to have to figure out how to get a position for this. You're going to have, I think you're going to need a center line for this. Does this help other people as well? Because it's obviously not dealing with their projects.
Definitely, it is helping.
Okay. So please now, guys, when you dimension, you need to zoom in because it's easy to go like this, right? And think, oh, I've got a dimension. But what you've dimensioned is some arbitrary point which doesn't dimension a feature. Like I see that and I say, well, I can't use that. That's not a useful point. What I want is the dimension from my datum to the start of that feature. Okay, let me just check if you guys are still here. Still here. Sorry, Zoom doesn't tell you exactly when it's finishing. It just cuts you off. It says in progress. Okay, so if I cut off, it's going to be in the next minute or so, and I'll just continue afterwards. Right, so now I've got that dimension. Now I need to know this gap here. So here is where you have what's called secondary dimensions, datums, not secondary dimensions, in the sense that instead of going from there to there, which sometimes would be important, because I know that this gap is just a gap which is being repeated, and it's not essential that the tolerance between these things is kept. It's legitimate then to dimension this like this. So there's one, I only need to dimension it once. So now I know that this feature is going to repeat. Okay, but before I do that, I just want to dimension, let's go from there up to there. That's not going to do it. It's from there to there. Sorry, I grabbed the wrong point in the beginning. So I've got the depth, and I've got the distance from the left-hand side, and I've got the width. Now I just need to know what's the frequency of this thing, and then I can put the radii in an exploded view or an enlarged view. So I need to know from that. Okay,